No matter who you are or what you do, you are unique in your point of view and your perspective and your experiences. And so I always say, make those experiences and who you are your strength.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Design Rescue Show. I am your host, David Block, and today I'm happy to welcome a visionary in the world of branding and design, the founder and creative director of Tantrum Agency, David Tann. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Great to have you, and I'm really looking forward to getting into your career journey. And the show really is basically about it's a behind the scenes tour of your career. And so I like to start as far back as I can to understand your education and your early influences. So to begin, I'm curious, could you describe your current role as the founder and creator of the of Tantrum Agency? Could you talk about what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so things have evolved quite a bit over the years, but now that we're 6 years as an agency, I don't design nearly as much as I used to when I started. And so I have a team, an amazing creative director, some amazing designers. So they generally are cranking out most of the creative for our clients. I would say probably 95% of it. So my day to day, generally speaking, is more business development. So it's being there for support if they need me, but really more meeting with new clients, interfacing with the community. So I do a lot of speaking events like this, talking at conferences, meeting with kids, stuff like that. So that's what my general day to day is. Like the specifics of any given day can change considerably just based off of what is kind of going on in the schedule. But most of the day for me is less about the actual creative and more managing the team at a high level and making sure we're doing all the business development and day-to-day stuff that we need to actually make sure that the agency is running.
Got it. Excellent. Okay. So now going back to the beginning, talking about your education, you went to Wake Forest University and you also attended the Portfolio Center, right?
Correct.
And so I'd like to know if in that time in your education, could you talk about a lesson or a project that you worked on or an experience that you had that still influences your work today? Or another way to put it, your biggest takeaway from that time period that you've integrated into your process?
Yeah, I mean, so one, I 20 some years ago when I graduated from Wake Forest, I didn't even know what design was. So my time at Wake was really more understanding communication, and that's what my degree is in communication. I had had no creative, no advertising, no art, no design, any of that stuff prior to graduate school. So I enrolled at the Portfolio Center, which is now the Miami Ad School, for writing because that's all I knew. I just thought that someone had to be writing these cool commercials that I saw Nike doing. I didn't realize that there was like a whole creative director, art director, photographer, set designer, stylist. I didn't realize that there was this whole world around that. So if I had to narrow it down to a project that really sort of changed everything for me, there was a couple pieces after I got kind of halfway through the program that really sort of changed the trajectory of my career. And those specific pieces I designed knowing that someone would probably have a perception or misconception of who I was as an artist or designer just based off the way that I looked. So I actually did two projects that were very feminine and very soft and very delicate. And the intent was to really just capture someone and make them, really just sort of second guess and not put me in a box as far as what they thought that I could do or what I was capable of. And those projects, I think, changed everything for me because, flash forward a year or so later, when I was at a portfolio review in New York, those were the two pieces that Hallmark saw. These two ladies who were recruiters for Hallmark stopped and kind of in their tracks and were like, "You did this?" Kind of shocked. And I was like, "Yeah, this is, my work." And like, wow, this is really emotional. You know, we sell emotion. Would you ever move to Kansas City or consider moving to Kansas City to work on greeting cards? And so that really changed everything to me for me, because you know what people don't realize is the vast majority of my career prior to starting the agency, almost all of the work that I did was targeted towards a female consumer, probably a white woman in middle America, which is like the total opposite of me. But because I had stretched myself and really tried to do something that was different as I progressed through my career, it wasn't weird for me to be put in those roles. So from me going and doing Hallmark, to then going to Hollister, but then launching a brand called Gilly Hicks, which was like women's apparel and bras and intimates and things like that. It wasn't a stretch for me because I'd proven that I could do that. And then, you know, you go to Bath and Body Works, female consumer. You know, you go to Kohl's, you're appealing to mom. You go to Oshkosh B'gosh, you're appealing to mom. So all those sort of moves, even though the aesthetic is very different in all those different places, the consumer is complete opposite of me. But because I stretched myself, I was able to make those moves.
If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment to hit that like button, leave a comment below, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our future videos. Thank you. Excellent. That's outstanding. Now, as you mentioned, you worked at a bunch of different places, and you've climbed the creative ladder all along the way, which from looking at your resume, starting out as a graphic designer, working your way all the way up to creative director. If you don't mind, I'd like to run through some of what I've seen in your resume there. You started out as a graphic designer at Hallmark, as you mentioned, senior graphic designer, and then marketing manager at Abercrombie and Fitch, art director at Bath and Body Works, manager of packaging design at Kohl's, okay, senior art director, and then creative director at Oshkosh, VP and creative director with the Atlanta Hawks. And currently you're the founder and CEO of Tantrum Agency. What an amazing run. That's a fantastic portfolio, or resume, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool to look at it in hindsight, but when you're going through it, you're just, you know, one foot in front of the other, you know.
Right, just pushing your way through.
Just pushing your way through. And like, you know, Abercrombie, for example, was a really great experience, but, you know, for Abercrombie, I was working on the Hollister brand and doing graphic tees, and got really good at that, and allowed me to shift over to branding, and which is where I got to launch Gilly Hicks. So yeah, it's just really one foot in front of the other, and like really diving into whatever I'm working on at the moment, and was able to do some pretty cool stuff.
Excellent. Now I'm curious what inspired you to start Tantrum Agency, to move into your own agency. Could you talk a little bit about some of the initial challenges that you faced when you were setting up your company?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because people ask me, like, you know, thinking that when did I want to do it? I wanted to do it. Geez, I remember being in my cubicle at Hallmark looking at other designers and, you know, wondering like, how did this designer get to do this? And, you know, I really wanted to do it early on, like a year or two outside of graduate school. A friend of mine, we actually started a company when I was at Abercrombie, and we did a couple projects. We did a bakery in Hong Kong called Baby Cakes, and so I had wanted it early on, but then like life happens. You know, we started having a family and a wife and kids, and those kind of things. You know, as a result, just kind of have to put things on hold and focus on that. And so, you know, things kind of got pushed to the side and just focus on career and providing for the family. And it wasn't until, 2017, my wife had been home as a stay-at-home mom. We met in design school, so we both worked at Hallmark together. We both worked at Abercrombie together. After about 10 or so years, she's just like, hey, you know, you let me be a stay-at-home mom, and like that was her dream, you know, to raise her kids. And she's like, you know, now go chase yours. And so that was like a really cool moment. And after that, it was just like, all right, let's go. Like that was all that I needed, and just, you know, really chased it. So I thought maybe it'd be 6 months if I was lucky, and you know, here we are. It's a little over 6 years. So yeah, it's been pretty fun.
It's outstanding. And now I want to talk about a couple of your projects that you've worked on. So for the Genesis Health project, for instance, you developed a brand that was both cutting edge and bold, right? And I'd like to know if you could walk us through the creative process behind that project.
Yeah, I mean, Genesis is like, it's one of my favorite projects, and I think it's one of my favorite because the people are so cool. Like, the identity is actually less a reflection of the company and more a reflection of the founders of the company. Um, they're it's a women-owned company. Karen and Tanya are the founders, and they have a third partner, by a guy by the name of Matt. And they've been working together for years, so they just have this chemistry that you don't find. Like, they're like old friends, super super professional, but when they're not at work, they have a good time. And they have a really good time. They're very free personalities. Like, you walk in a room and they're the kind of people that just are like life of the party type people. And so there was this dichotomy of, but wait, you're selling in health insurance, that couldn't be any more boring, but you are like three of the funnest people that I've ever been around in my life. So we knew that because of the industry, we had to speak a certain language, but at the same time too, we wanted to make sure that it was still a reflection of the founders and that energy. And so we had gone through this process of like showing them creative. And at one point, there was like we were using magenta as sort of like an accent color in our presentation decks.
Mhm.
And at one point, one of the founders was just like, hey, can we try this? And we're like, yeah, like, we'll go take a stab at it. And so we've been working with this sort of navy blue palette. They kind of threw us this curveball of like, they wanted something that had some punch to it. And we tried it and they loved it. And then there's also some other Easter eggs in there that, like, there's like lightning bolts and stuff in there that like you wouldn't see on the surface, but that was used to make some patterns and stuff like that. But again, we just want to kind of subtly have the energy of the founders in there, but from a distance and on the surface level, it looks very like polished and professional.
It sounds like a fun project.
Yeah, it was awesome. They're fun people.
Now, another project, you're working with the CDC's vaccination awareness campaign.
Yep.
And I'd like to know, what strategies did you use to ensure that the message was effectively communicated to a diverse audience?
Yeah, I mean, so any work that we do with the CDC is in partnership with Weber Shandwick, which is another large agency. So they kind of have the master contract with the CDC, and we're subcontractors that kind of get brought on as like special ops, special projects. So we were brought on specifically because this campaign was targeting a minority audience. So we bring our perspective. There's also another consultant who's of color, and we kind of all work together and provide our own insights as far as what's going to speak to that community. The beauty though with the CDC is they put everything into testing. So no matter what you feel or whatever you think is going to roll, they're going to test it first before it goes out. And so this particular campaign that you're referencing that's on our website, at one point it was minority audiences. But then through testing, it was like, oh, these principles appeal to everyone. And so it actually expanded in scope a little bit, to where it got pushed to general market because it was just so effective and emotional. And that campaign was pretty important because it was coming on the tail end of COVID, and everyone was so much anxiety around vaccinations. This has nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. This is like your regular everyday childhood vaccines that actually people were missing out on because, one, they were afraid to leave their house, or two, there was just so much talk about vaccines in general that like everything kind of got put on hold. So we just really wanted to get back to the heart of kids being able to play again and like be kids again and like get out there and like enjoy life. And so it was a fun campaign to work on. But it was one of those ones where like in the time it felt really weighty and really heavy because just all the things that were happening in the world.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, and then another project that we're just kind of moving through these. So I hope you don't mind. You worked on Pam's Magic Cauldron. That looked like a really interesting one. It required infusing the owner's personality into the brand. And I'd like to know, how did you approach capturing Pam's passion for food in the branding elements?
Yeah, I mean, you're picking some really cool products to reference because I think what you can kind of see is you've got Genesis, which is very corporate. You've got the CDC, which is public health. And then you've got Pam, who is just like a personal chef. And um, the thing that I love about Pam's is that if we were a typical agency, we would have never touched Pam's project because, like, realistically, like from a budgetary standpoint, we would have said, you know what, it's not on our price point or whatever, whatever. We don't believe in that. And like specifically, there's certain projects that we do as an agency that we feel like it's our obligation to do it and goodwill. And you have a minority woman owned business who really needed help and she's got a really great product. And we felt like we should do it. And the team loved work. Like she is the nicest, most fun lady and her food is amazing. And so again, with everything in the Pam's, it's just really trying to capture her energy and just capture her spirit and, pull out some of the little nuances. And I think the thing that is the coolest about her is every time we feature that project, she always is looking at the other projects that are around hers. And she's just like, I can't believe that you would, put my little thing next to an Abercrombie or put my little thing next to a whatever. And we're like, no, we're just as proud of this work. And so I think that to me is the coolest part of Pam's project is less so much the visuals. I think the visuals are cool and, they're fun and they're quirky and she's just like got a big personality and is fun. And her food is amazing. But more just what it was able to do for her as a person and, the confidence that it gave her. And, for her to know that, like, we have, she's got a team of people that she's going to call and we'll do whatever she asks us to do. To me, that is what I'm most proud of with that project.
Excellent. So, and I'm curious if there are other projects that you've worked on where you've had to integrate the founder's personality, because that's seems like a one-off kind of sort of an approach.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it actually isn't that uncommon. I think that especially depending on the company and depending on the size of the company, some founders are still very involved. Other ones have kind of moved on. And so just as you're doing your discovery and due diligence into who the company is and how the company runs and who the actual decision makers are, those are things that you always have to sort of take into consideration. So one of the ones that I think has, as of late, has come out, but we haven't like really truly rolled out is like Share Our Strength. And most people wouldn't know Share Our Strength if I said it to you, but Share Our Strength is the company behind the No Kid Hungry campaign, which is national. A lot of people know about the No Kid Hungry campaign. And so Share Our Strength is the actual organization. No Kid Hungry is actually just the marketing campaign. And so, we got to work with those guys for a couple years and work very closely with the founders, co-founders, Billy and Debbie. And a lot of the stuff when we were sort of working on the rebrand was re-infusing the history and a lot of the lessons. Like we read a lot of Billy's books and subtly infused things, whether it's how we named the colors and the brand style guide or the font we named after a specific person and all these things. So we were just infusing little elements of him and her and their personality into what the brand is going to be, because if it's going to be a legacy brand, it's going to last way beyond them. And so it's ways for us to make sure that history and that isn't lost and that it has that same care and stuff. So So we try to, whenever we can, infuse those things because I think it's important, and it's just one of those things that I learned from branding in the early days at Abercrombie, that the heritage and the history is the most important thing. That's the one thing that another organization can't copy. Like, they can copy the way that you look, they can copy the way that you talk about something, they can copy your photography style, they can use the same fonts, they could, to some degree, copy the colors to some degree, but they can't copy your actual history and your actual heritage, and like, how you actually run your company and those types of things. And so whenever we can, we try to infuse those for sure.
That's beautiful. Okay. Well, we've actually come right to the end of the conversation. And first of all, I just want to say thank you again for being a part of my show. I absolutely appreciate you being here. And my last question for you is, what advice would you give young creatives that are just starting out, whether they're coming out of high school or college? What sort of advice would you give them if they're interested in branding and design?
Geez, that's a tough one. I mean, there's a couple things. Like, can I give you two things instead of one thing?
Absolutely, yes.
So the two things that I always talk about is just understanding the difference between branding and marketing. And a lot of students or young designers don't really know the difference, and they're both very important and they go hand in hand, but to me, they're very different. And so the easiest way that I kind of explain it is, marketing is asking someone out on a date. Branding is the reason why they say yes or no. And understanding what part of this creative world you like the best or are more drawn to can be helpful. So for me, I don't really like the marketing part of it, but like, there are people who do, and they make a ton of money and have great careers doing it. I like the branding part. I like the who are you, like, what do you really stand for? Because to me, if I know who you are as a organization, as a company, what your values are, what you stand for, your why, then all the marketing decisions should be easy, because those decisions should be reflective of who you are as a company. And so I don't see enough students really understanding or appreciating that piece of it. So it's like very easy to come up with ideas and campaigns and et cetera. But it's like, if that doesn't speak to who I am as a company, then we've missed the boat. So that would be my first thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with going down either path, but just understanding sort of where you want to be and what types of things that you like can be very helpful and beneficial. And no one really explained that to me early on. And then I would say the second piece of advice is, like, no matter who you are or what you do, you are unique in your point of view and your perspective and your experiences. And so I always say, make those experiences and who you are your strength. So for example, for me, I thought that I was at a huge disadvantage because I didn't have a design degree. I never took advertising. I didn't have a marketing. I didn't have any of those traditional sort of experiences going into grad school. Flash forward 20 years later, that was the best decision I could have ever made, because I have a communication degree, which means that, like, I can pitch an idea, or I can talk to people, or I can work with a client, I can be in a group, or I can be on a stage and I feel comfortable. And a lot of creatives can't do that. And it doesn't matter how great the idea is, generally speaking, we're always selling the idea to someone. And so if we can't get other people to buy into our vision or our ideas or what we're trying to do, then we kind of miss the boat. So if I had sort of wallowed in my things that I don't have, then I would have never been able to sort of make the most of my career. So that would be my biggest thing. No matter who you are, what you do, like, your experience is unique to you, and figure out a way to make that your strength would be my second piece.
Excellent. Fantastic advice. Thank you so much. And once again, I appreciate your being here and being a part of the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I truly, truly enjoy it. And, anytime.